So the fun thing about these games is that people play them for all different kinds of reasons. I am somebody who really enjoys building bases and helping people. So I wanted to show you how to make a nice base setup to protect yourself for server versus server, or in our case, we also have an absolute maniac on our server who just randomly breaks snap and is kind of a jerk. So we have a nice base setup for him. So if you look at the red here, the red was my base that I built for an alliance called Calm. Then we've got this green area over here is another alliance, and actually a little bit of this red is another alliance that I helped add on to our alliance. But since then, I have added this alliance, Gur, who merged with us. I've added all of their flags in this blue. So you'll see the blue, or the white ones are the ones that we're still building, to the outside of our already really, really massive base. So that if somebody wanted to attack somebody here, it's basically like 13 flags deep to get to us, which is over a minute march time. While it is kind of a pain to do this, most of the flags in the blue were built over the last week, so it really wasn't that hard. It didn't take that long because it was an alliance that already had their research for all the flags unlocked. It went very quickly, and it was not that hard. I just kind of had my 4 marches. I send my 4 builders out. It takes an hour and a half to build each flag because they're very low level troops. And I come back in an hour and a half, 2-3 hours later, send them out to 4 new flags, easy peasy. The reason you do this is because it buys you extra time to reinforce your friends. And if you have a server versus server matchup where they're trying to get points, if I saw a base like this, I'd be like, oh, come on. I would not even bother. Like, I absolutely would not try to attack anybody in there. For one thing, when it was server versus server time, most of us were shielded, even though we were in a really massive, well-protected base, just because there's no reason not to use your free shields for server versus server. But then to have that extra layer of protection, also very good. So now I'm going to show you, I have 2 servers I play on. This is one that my server 5 was matched up with, and I did attack them before our Central Plaza. This alliance was very similar to how our base was set up. So not quite as big here, but they probably have about 6 or 7 flags deep on each side. So when I came to attack them, I was like right there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. And so I think I ended up only hitting like 1 or 2 of these people on the edge. And then I hit the resource nodes. For some reason, they had a lot of people gathering. You should not gather on server versus server day. It's very, very easy points. You take very little losses and damages for attacking resource nodes with a full army. I don't normally even scout. That being said, if you want to set up little traps, send a full march out to resource nodes, and you can kind of catch people off surprise like that because they are not necessarily expecting a full march at those. But because that base was really built up, I did not hit very many of those fountains because they could have very easily reinforced their friends. So because they have a decent amount of strength, they were an active alliance with some higher players, and they had a base that was built up to reinforce easily. This made this a much less desirable target for points, which is why I went for the easy points of just hitting the resource nodes, which is a pain to them. They have to heal. It gets me points, but I don't steal the resources from their base, and you don't have quite as many troop loss on a resource node as you would for a fountain hit. This is not an active alliance, but if it was, just think about it. Like, if you were to place yourself there, you're only, 3 flags away from a base to hit. 2-3 flags away. That's how a lot of bases are set up, and they're very, very easily attackable to get quick turnaround, hit bases a lot, hit bases multiple times before people can reinforce or shield. This server as a whole was pretty much a ghost town, but this is how most of these alliances are set up, where you could just teleport right next to somebody's base and hit those nodes very easily, hit those fountains very quickly, very easily. So here's another example from server 16 where we literally just showed up and lined up our bases there. I had one of my alts shielded and behind me because you can be shielded and send reinforcements to fountains. So I sent all of my troops out as reinforcements on my weaker account. And then I could just scout and hit all of these fountains with, just like 10 to 20-second marches on all of them. So if you want to not be a good target for server versus server or for bullies, build up your base. Put some love and effort into your base so that it's less enticing to hit you and you don't get that quick turnaround. Like this guy here had an insane amount of resources and was not shielded, and I hit his base like 10 times. Yeah, it's mean, but lots of points, lots of resources. You should be shielded during server versus server. So on our server, because we have had a few whales that get to be very bully-y, I have encouraged people to use their flags and build out as much as possible so you get that extra time to reinforce. One thing you do want to keep in mind is make sure that you do these gaps on the outside. If you have fountains that are partially in and partially out of your area, they do not get the bonuses from your research or your lab. So if you'll notice here, we have a very, very solid center here and a very, very solid center there, so that we kind of have two trap areas we can move back and forth. And then on the outside, we have holes. Try not to do too many holes where you want to put your trap, just so that when people teleport in and when people are close to your trap, that they are completely within your territory. And then when you're building, I absolutely will just kind of click on places and see, can I teleport there? And it's like, okay, so it looked like I could teleport here. There was space, but there's a mountain there and I cannot. So you just kind of go through and double check. Again, this looks like a pretty big gap. And I click teleport, and I can teleport here. So this, I would be able to teleport there. But that is kind of far away. So that's just kind of like where you look to build and to build out. So that's one alliance, pretty much all of the flags minus what was needed to get to labs. All of this other extra stuff on the outside was GUR that merged with us. Then pretty much this whole center area here, and then this part down here was a third alliance, basically. So we have 3 alliances to protect this one alliance. And we're also kind of helping our neighbors with those extra flags. And they're not necessarily allies, but they're also not enemies. Anyway, server versus server, or maniacs, bullies, build your base up. Have a nice solid place where people can have all 4 corners of their fountain inside your alliance. And then also have that extra barrier on the outside. And you will be a less enticing target. Mind you, before we had those extra flags, the extra red ones on the outside, we still had somebody who was just constantly attacking us. And because we were so deeply defended, he did have to spend a lot of money on speeding marches. And he also did hit our resource nodes more than our fountains because it was risky to hit our fountains because of how our base was set up. So it minimized the rage that maniac had, but just something to keep in mind. So just like a last little thing, just to kind of show you how I would add on, that white square there, we don't really need to build that. I mean, I will eventually, but you focus on building the flags that you need to build off of. because like I said, it takes an hour and a half to build each flag, and I can put a lot more down. We had pretty high resource generation, so that was something to keep in mind for me. When I'm looking for another place to put the flag, I look at like, this is where our main base is, right? I scroll out and I see where I would go if I wanted to attack. So that feels pretty deep over here. Maybe like here-ish. Maybe another layer there. But like that's pretty deep. So like that's kind of where we would have to go over there. There. Here. So at this point, we are down to like our last 10 flags, so it's not super critical. We've already got like a pretty high situation, so I'm probably just going to fill in this little corner here. Ooh, I don't have any resources. Okay, so I would do this where I leave a gap there, but a single gap, not a double gap. So I could place my flag there. I could place the flag here. But what I'd probably do, I'd probably place the flag there. And then this next one, I would just leave that, like that gap there. And then this one, after that, I could place one here. That kind of thing. So I try to put like 3 flags in there. And you can see when I build out, I just kind of leave one little path, single path all along. You want to make sure that you at most have enough for 3/4 of a fountain, but not 4/4. So like this is another good spot. This is a pretty big hole here where we could just kind of put something like that there. And with our last couple flags in this project, I'm not super worried about resources. We only have, like I said, a few more flags to place.